For the basket block, I have all my parts cut, and what you're going to do is read the instructions as far as some additional subcuts. So some of these squares will end up to be cut into triangles for different parts of the basket. What we're going to start with is the side piece. I'm just going to set these aside. I need my ruler. And a marking pencil. What I'm going to do is on one end, I'm going to mark 2.5 on this. I'm going to line the other piece up, and I'm going to mark 2.5 from this edge in on this side. So they kind of just mirror each other. After I've marked that, I'm going to just line the ruler up on my mark to the outside corner. And then repeat that for the other side from the mark to the outside corner. I'm just going to set these aside because we don't need them any longer. So now that we have this piece, I'm going to set this left one aside. We're going to build kind of the side down it. So we're going to take our subcuts and we're just going to lay them out. So what's going to happen is this angle is going to continue down. All right, to make this work, I'm going to sew these two pieces together, and then I'm going to add the triangle on, then adding it to the background rectangular piece we have. Going to give it a good press. And as you notice, when I sewed the triangle on, this extra triangle is going, or the extra little point is going to hang off the end. That makes it work out just perfect. So now what we're going to do is go ahead and stitch our background to that new piece. When you're sewing this piece on as well, you're going to make sure that your little point or triangle is hanging off the edge there. That will give you a nice direct line. That is just perfect. And then just give it a good press. All right, so now we're going to start building the other section. We're just going to lay it out according to the pictures, and this will make it a lot easier to sew together. So I've got 3 of my subcut triangles, and then I have my 2 lighter squares that fit right here. And then I will have 1 of my darker triangles on the corner here. So I'm going to go ahead and just sew them into rows. So I'm going to sew these 3 together, these 2, and then after I'm done, I can start attaching the rows together. All right, now that I have these 2 sections done, I'm going to go ahead and place right sides together. Make sure that you nest these seams up because they will line up and that your point is off of the edge when you sew it. All right, and my last piece, I'm going to go ahead, line up that square edge. The point is going to be off the end and give that a sew. All right, so now I've got this section all ready. I do need to add my bottom. So that was previously cut earlier. I'm going to go ahead and stitch that down as well. All right, now as you can see, I've got a little bit of an overhang over here. I can take my ruler and go ahead and line this up and just give those little dog ears a trim off. So those points, anything extra, this will help when I sew the basket pieces together so I don't get off track on that edge. All right, so I've got this piece ready. I've got this piece ready. Now I need to work on this little corner over here. For this one, we are going to take our rectangle and measure 1 7/8 and make a mark. And then we're going to measure 1 7/8 from the opposite side and make a mark. We're going to now take our ruler and we're going to cut, lining up the bottom corner with our mark that we just drew, and then repeating it with the other side. So lining the ruler up with the corner to that drawn line. I'm going to set those aside. We're going to end up with a little bit of a funny shape, but that's okay. Now what we're going to do is sew our smaller triangle to the top of that. Just line up the edge, make sure that your points are hanging off before you sew. Press this out. So So now what's going to happen is we are going to take this piece with our background and we are going to just lay right sides together and stitch these two together. Now that we have this complete, we can go ahead and start putting our pieces that we have complete together. So we're going to take this upper unit and stitch it down to the side. And they should measure up just fine, and stitch along our 1/4 inch seam. Okay, we're going to repeat the process with this other side. This is the whole bottom half of our basket block. Just going to line up this corner and then make sure again that your point is off of the block 1/4 inch. Now that our bottom half of the basket is complete, we will need to now make this upper section. So now we need to work on our strap. We're going to fold the handle for the basket. We're going to fold the handle in half so the edges meet. This is really just to give us a crease line for the next part. So we just need something that kind of guides us a little bit. We're going to be opening this back up and we're going to fold the top in, meeting that crease line. We're also going to be folding the bottom in to meet that crease line. If you have a hem tape maker or some other fun quilting contraption or notion that does this for you, go ahead, right ahead and work with that. That will be just fine. Basically, you're going to end up with 1/2 inch of this hem tape. So I'm just going to hold it down and start pressing it, making sure I get those two to the inside here. You do want to make sure that you cut this on the bias, which means that you cut it in a diagonal and not straight. So this is going to be turning and have a little curve to it, and you really do need the bias to allow it to do that. The first thing you're going to do is fold this in half and give it a good press. You want to mark the center of your basket handle. This way we can put it on our background, kind of like right in the middle of this. So I've got my background triangle right here. I'm going to fold this in half and make a triangle and give it just kind of a finger press along here as well. When I open it up, I'm going to be able to see that finger press, and then I've got my center of my basket handle. So what I just want to make sure is that you don't want it to be super close to the edge. You want to remind yourself that you will have a seam allowance here, and so you don't want to get close to that. So depending on that, you can come down, you can kind of play with the placement. For right now, I'm just going to pin the top center down, and then you kind of stretch it just a little bit to make it curve. And as you do that, you can set some pins in here, or you can use a tacky glue or Elmer's glue or a glue stick to glue it in place. What you want to do is make sure that when you come down, you are not going to be further than what your basket is, because you don't want your handle to be way off here. So you just want to make sure that your basket handle is going to hit on the inside of your basket. I'm just going to hold it down and pin it in place. I, of course, can pull this out and make any adjustments while I'm actually stitching it down. And then I'm going to repeat the process for the other side. So now that I've got that set, I can pull this a little bit and ease it into a nice curve. Pinning all the way down. And then when you come to the end, you just want to make sure that, again, you are not sticking outside of that basket base. And just be aware that when you sew this together, you're going to have a 1/4 inch seam on this side, which will sometimes mess up where that ends. So you might want to undition it or just err on the inside. So now that I have my basket handle all pinned down, I'm going to move this pin because I can't stitch when it's sticking like that. So now I can go ahead and flip right sides together. I can make sure and double check that my basket handle is inside this basket line, and I'm going to stitch 1/4 inch from corner to corner. Now that I have my basket sewn down, I can go ahead and give this a good press. You can see that I've checked it and my basket handle is in a good spot. If there's anything that's like out of place or weird, I can go ahead and just unpick that little area and adjust the handle if I wanted to. The next thing you're going to do is take this to your sewing machine and you're going to either stitch like a buttonhole stitch or a zigzag, or you can actually hand stitch these down and just tack the handle down on both sides of the handle so it stays secure. After you have your handle attached properly, you're going to look at the pattern and make sure that it lines up and squares up properly to what you need, and do any kind of trimming if needed prior to putting it into the larger section for the quilt.